The mother's letter. My name is Whitney. I am 31 years old. I work as a pediatric physical therapy assistant at a children's rehabilitation center in Augusta, Georgia. And on a Tuesday afternoon in late April, sitting in a notary's office that smelled like old coffee and toner ink, I watched my mother-in-law sign away her only son. Joanne Albright read the document out loud. Not the way lawyers read. The way teachers read, the way she had read to 30 years of fourth graders, every syllable landing where it was supposed to land, nothing swallowed, nothing rushed. I, Joanne Albright, being of sound mind and body, hereby revoke all previous testamentary documents. Her hands were on the table, palms flat, thin. I could see every vein, every bruise where the IV had gone in wrong during round 39 or 40. I'd lost count of which specific needle left, which specific mark. But her hands were still, not a tremor. 47 rounds of chemotherapy had taken her hair, her appetite, 15 pounds she couldn't spare, and most of her patience for nonsense. They had not taken her hands. The notary's pen scratched across the page. Fluorescent light buzzed above us. I sat beside Joanne, and I did not speak. My eyes were dry. I had done my crying the week before, alone on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m, and I had no interest in doing it again. Joanne signed. The notary signed. 2 witnesses signed, a receptionist and a paralegal, who probably did this 40 times a week and would not remember us by Friday. Joanne turned to me. He's going to call you. Probably tonight. Don't answer. I know. She looked at me then. The look I'd seen 100 times over 5 years, usually after chemo when she was too exhausted to keep her guard up. The look that said more than any sentence she'd ever spoken. Whitney. Her voice dropped. Almost a whisper. You are the only person who stayed. I swallowed. My throat was dry. She said it in the same voice my mother used to use back before my mother couldn't use any voice at all. 5 weeks earlier, I was scrubbing applesauce off Joanne's favorite blouse when the front door opened. It hadn't opened on a weekday in 3 years. But I should start before that. I should start with the fort. That's what Logan called it. The fort. Our house, Joanne's house, the place I came home to every day after my shift at the clinic, still wearing mint green scrubs with my hair pulled up because the kids liked to grab ponytails, and I'd learned the hard way to keep mine, high and tight. I'd walk in the door at 3:15, drop a grocery bag on the counter and start my second shift. Ensure shakes for Joanne. Ginger ale. Her favorite lemon yogurt from the Kroger on Wheeler Road, the only brand she could keep down after bad days. The house smelled like pine sol because I mopped the kitchen floor every morning before work. The TV was always on in Joanne's room, Jeopardy reruns volume low. I could hear Alex Trebek's voice from the kitchen while I microwaved her soup and checked my phone. Logan's Employee of the Year video was still bookmarked. I'd watched it 8 times. There he was on stage at the National Sales Conference, navy vest, white teeth, that grin that used to make me feel like the luckiest woman in Georgia. I couldn't do any of this without my wife Whitney, he said, leaning into the microphone with both hands on the podium. She holds down the fort back home so I can focus on building something out here. She's my rock. 200 people clapped. I pressed replay and stirred the soup. Joanne's leather journal sat on her nightstand. I set a glass of water next to it, and she closed the cover before I could see what she'd written. Just my ramblings, sweetheart, she said, and I didn't push. I had never read that journal. It was hers. That was enough. I passed the locked room upstairs on my way to get clean towels. Second door on the left, Logan's old bedroom. I'd asked about it once 2 years ago. Joanne said it was storage, said the key got lost somewhere. I never asked again. There were a million things more urgent than a locked door. That afternoon, Joanne was having a good day. She sat up for lunch. She talked. She asked the question she asked every few weeks, the one I never had a good answer for. You work 7 to 3. Then you come home and work 3 to midnight. When do you sleep, Whitney? I smiled. Between midnight and 5:30. Same as residency, except nobody's paying me overtime. Logan should be here. He's working, Joanne. The words came out fast, automatic, a sentence I'd said so many times it had lost its shape. His territory covers 3 states now. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, that sound. 2 letters. I'd heard it hundreds of times. She never argued with me about Logan. She just said, And that single syllable carried more weight than any accusation she could have made. It sat in the room like furniture. My phone rang while I was washing Joanne's favorite mug. Logan. I nearly dropped it, reaching for the towel. Hey babe, quick question. I'm coming home this weekend. Friday night. Logan did not come home on regular weekends. He came for Christmas, sometimes Thanksgiving, the occasional 3-day visit when his mother's numbers looked bad enough to scare him into booking a flight. The last time was Christmas 4 months ago. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah. We need to talk about some things. Mom's health, the house us. Just things. Okay. And babe, I'm bringing someone. A colleague. She's been wanting to meet Mom. I stood in the kitchen holding the phone. Afternoon light came through the window the same way it always did. Jeopardy was still on. The soup was still warm. Everything was exactly the same as it had been 5 minutes ago. Everything was completely different. I spent the rest of the week cleaning. After my shifts at the clinic, after Joanne's meds and vitals and dinner, I scrubbed baseboards and wiped ceiling fans and organized the pantry by expiration date. I made Joanne's brisket recipe, the one with brown sugar and apple cider vinegar that took 6 hours. I set the dining table for 4. It hadn't been set for 4 in 2 years. I put on jeans. A blouse. Not scrubs. I looked in the bathroom mirror, and I did not recognize the woman looking back, not because she looked bad, but because she looked like someone trying. The front door opened at 6:45 on Friday. Logan walked in first. He was better looking than I remembered. New haircut tanned something bright behind his eyes that hadn't been there at Christmas. Behind him came a woman. Blonde hair, white blazer boots that went to her knees. She carried a gift bag in one hand. In her other arm she carried a baby. "Whitney, this is Piper. She's on my team at work." Logan's voice was easy practiced. "And this is Lily, her daughter. Her daughter. Not our daughter. Not my daughter. Her." I looked at Lily. She had Logan's eyes. Not approximately his eyes, not a passing resemblance. His exact eyes. Dark brown with that ring of amber around the pupil that I used to notice every morning across the breakfast table when we still ate breakfast together. And the way the baby tilted her head when she looked at me. I'd seen that gesture 1,000 times. It was in our wedding photos. Piper stepped inside like she'd rehearsed the entrance. "Whitney, I've heard so much about you. Logan says you're amazing with his mom. I brought this. I hope you like rosé." I took the bottle. I said, "Thank you." I smiled. One half of my brain handled the social choreography, while the other half did math. Lily looked about 18 months old. Subtract 9 months of pregnancy. That meant Piper conceived roughly 27 months ago. Logan's territory expanded to Jacksonville 3 years ago. The timeline fit like a key in a lock. We ate dinner. I served brisket to everyone, including the woman who was sleeping with my husband, and I refilled water glasses, and I passed the salt, and I complimented Piper's earrings, because that is what Whitney Albright does. That is who she is. The woman who holds things together even when the things she is holding are on fire. Piper talked too much. She was too comfortable. She knew what tea Joanne liked. She knew how many bedrooms the house had. She knew Logan drank his whiskey neat. Joanne came to the table in her wheelchair. She looked at Piper. She looked at Lily. Her face did not change. No surprise. No confusion. She already knew. After dinner, Logan walked me out to the back porch. The air was thick and warm the way Augusta gets in late spring, almost liquid. Cicadas screaming in the trees. "Whitney, I'm not going to pretend anymore." He put his hands in his pockets. He was standing in the light from the kitchen window, and he looked golden like a photograph of someone I used to know. "Piper and I have been together for 3 years. Lily is my daughter." He paused. "Let it sit. I want a divorce. I think it's the right thing. For everyone." Through the glass door behind him, I could see Piper at the sink. She was washing the dishes. In Joanne's kitchen, using my sponge. Running water from the faucet I'd replaced 3 months ago because the old one leaked, and Logan said he'd fix it next visit. He never came. "Okay," I said. Logan blinked. He had prepared for tears, for screaming, for "how could you, for what about us, for all the things a wife is supposed to say when her husband tells her he has another family." He had not prepared for "okay. Okay, you heard me." I went inside. I washed my face. I lay down in bed in the room I'd slept in alone for 1,000 nights, and I stared at the ceiling until 5:30, when my body got up the way it always got up without being asked, because that's what it did. I made coffee. I lined up Joanne's pills. My hands shook. First time in 5 years. The prednisone tablet slipped between my fingers and rolled under the cabinet, and I got on my knees on the kitchen floor to find it, and that was when it hit me down there on the linoleum, reaching under the cabinet for a pill that cost 11 cents. At 3 in the morning, I'd heard Lily crying upstairs. My body had started to get up, instinct the way I always got up when Joanne needed something in the night. Then I stopped. Not my baby. Never my baby. Because every time I'd ask Logan about children, he'd said, "Not yet. Not yet, babe. Let's wait until things settle down." Things never settled. Things moved to Jacksonville and had a baby with a woman named Piper. Joanne called from her bedroom. I went in. She was sitting up, eyes sharp, clear, fully present. One of her good mornings. He told you, she said. Yes. How long did he say? 3 years. She nodded slowly. It's longer, Whitney. I've known for 2. The floor shifted under me. Not actually, but close enough. Joanne had known. For 2 years. She had known while I drove her to chemo round 30, while I slept on the hospital chair when her white count dropped, while I gave up overtime shifts to come home and make chicken broth from scratch, because the canned kind had too much sodium for her medication. I wanted to be angry. The anger was right there waiting. But Joanne kept talking. I didn't tell you because you would have left. And if you left, I would have died. She looked at her hands, the same hands that had been so steady in the notary's office 5 weeks from now. Not from cancer. From being alone with a son who doesn't come home. The room was quiet. Upstairs I could hear Logan's footsteps, the creak of the guest bed, Piper's voice soft saying something to Lily. But I didn't do nothing, Whitney. Joanne looked up at me. I need you to know that. I did not do nothing. Her eyes moved. Up, past me. Toward the ceiling. Toward the 2nd floor. Toward the locked room. Not yet, she said. When you're ready. I stood in the doorway of her bedroom holding a glass of water and a prednisone tablet I'd fished out from under the kitchen cabinet, and I understood that something existed in this house that I did not yet know about. Something Joanne had been building while I was holding down the fort. Something behind a locked door that she had told me was just old storage keys lost somewhere. The keys were not lost. Joanne knew exactly where they were. Logan and Piper left Sunday afternoon. Lily fussed in the car seat while Piper buckled her in, and I watched from the kitchen window drying a plate I'd already dried twice. Logan stood in the driveway looking back at the house like he was posing for something. A memory, maybe. Or a real estate listing. Monday morning I went to work. 7 o'clock. Scrubs on. Hair up. I had a 4-year-old named Marcus on my table at 7:15 cerebral palsy, tight hamstrings, and he needed me to count to 10 while we stretched his left leg because counting made it less scary. So I counted. I counted and I stretched, and I told Marcus he was doing amazing because he was, and because my job was to hold this boy's legs steady, even if the rest of me was falling apart. I made it to lunch. That was an accomplishment. I sat in the break room with a turkey sandwich I'd packed at 5:30 that morning, and I looked at it the way you look at something that used to mean something but doesn't anymore. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't anything. I was just sitting in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights holding a sandwich. Carmen found me. Carmen Reyes, 44, registered nurse, Station 3. We'd worked the same floor for 4 years. She had a laugh you could hear from the parking lot, and a cat named Judge Judy, and an ex-husband who'd taught her everything she never wanted to know about Georgia divorce law. She pulled out the chair across from me and sat down hard. Who died? My marriage. I put the sandwich down. 3 years ago, apparently. I just found out Friday. Carmen didn't say I'm sorry, didn't tilt her head, didn't reach for my hand. She sat there for 3 seconds processing, and then she asked the only question that mattered. Do you have a lawyer? No. Do you have your own money, your own accounts? Yes. Savings. My 401k. My own checking. My car's in my name. She exhaled. A long, slow breath, the kind I recognized from triage when you check the vitals and they're not as bad as you expected. Good, she said. That's more than I had. Carmen told me her story in the same tone she used to brief doctors on patient status. Quick, clinical, all the important fat, none of the feelings. Her ex, the receptionist at his accounting firm. 4 years Carmen stayed because she thought if she were just a better wife, a better cook, a better whatever, he'd stop. He didn't stop. She lost the house, lost her savings. Came out the other side in a 1-bedroom apartment on Broad Street with a second-hand couch and a cat she'd adopted from the shelter on the day her divorce was finalized. Georgia is a fault state, she said. His adultery bars him from alimony. He gets nothing from you, but you need to file first. And you need evidence. I have a name, Piper Voss, and an 18-month-old daughter who has his exact eyes. Jesus. She did my dishes, Carmen, in Joanne's kitchen. With my sponge? Carmen stared at me. Then she leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for a second. I'm going to need you to tell me that part again. So I told her. All of it. The brisket dinner, the rosé, the way Piper knew what tea Joanne liked, the way Lily tilted her head, the back porch, the cicadas, the okay. Carmen listened the way nurses listen, which is to say, she listened for the thing underneath the thing you're saying. When I finished, she pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts and wrote a name and number on a napkin. Marcia Webb. She handled my divorce. She's not flashy, but she doesn't miss. Call her today. I put the napkin in my scrub's pocket. It stayed there through my afternoon patients, through the drive home, through Joanne's meds and dinner, and the 11 o'clock vitals check. I called Marcia Webb the next morning from the clinic parking lot at 6:45, sitting in my Honda Civic with the engine off, watching the sun come up over the rehabilitation center where I helped children learn to walk. Wednesday evening. Logan was back. He'd flown in that morning for the week, he said, as if this house were a hotel he checked into when it was convenient. Piper had stayed in Jacksonville with Lily. Just Logan this time. Logan and a stack of paper. He was sitting at the kitchen table when I got home from work. My chair. The one I always sat in when I fed Joanne her dinner, the one with the cushion I'd bought at Target because the wood was hard on my back after 8 hours on my feet. He was in my chair like it belonged to him. On the table, divorce papers. Yellow post-it notes marking every line where I was supposed to sign. The kitchen smelled like his cologne. He'd always worn the same one, and I used to love it, used to press my face into his shirts when I missed him. Now the scent sat in my throat like something spoiled. "Here's what I'm thinking," he said, leaning back, legs crossed, ankle on knee. The pose of a man making a pitch. Clean split. Uncontested. You keep your car, your savings, your retirement. I maintain my position as sole heir to Mom's estate, which, let's be honest, is the house. I won't touch your 401k. Fair and simple. I looked at the papers. I looked at the post-it notes. Little yellow arrows pointing to the places where Whitney Albright was supposed to end her marriage with a ballpoint pen. You want me to sign tonight. There's no point dragging this out, Whit. We both know it's over. When did it end for you? When Piper got pregnant, or before that? His face changed. The salesman warmth drained out, and something harder took its place. Don't do that. Don't do what? Don't make this about blame. We grew apart. It happens. We didn't grow apart, Logan. You left. You chose to stay with Mom. He leaned forward now. Elbows on the table, my table, the table I wiped down every night after Joanne's dinner. I asked you to come to Jacksonville. You said, no. You asked me to leave your mother alone in this house with stage 3 ovarian cancer. She has home health aides. I am her home health aide. My voice was steady. I was surprised by how steady it was. I am also her cook, her driver, her pharmacist, her emergency contact, and the person who held her hair back when she vomited for 6 straight hours after round 23. Where were you during round 23, Logan? His jaw did the thing. The small twitch on the right side, the muscle that tightened whenever I said something he couldn't argue with. I'd watched that twitch through a phone screen for 3 years every time I asked when he was coming home. He'd twitch, and then he'd change the subject. I used to think it meant he missed me. Now I knew it meant I was getting too close to the truth. He softened, dropped his shoulders, tilted his head, switched characters. Whit. I know I wasn't there enough. I know that. And I'm sorry, truly. But fighting about it isn't going to help either of us. Let's just make this clean. For Mom's sake. For Mom's sake. He said that. He actually said those words, invoking the woman who raised him, the woman he abandoned, the woman I bathed last night because she was too weak to stand in the shower, as his reason to hurry me into signing away 6 years of marriage over a stack of papers he'd had his lawyer draft in Jacksonville, between sales calls. I looked at the papers. I looked at the post-it notes. I looked up at the ceiling toward the second floor, toward the locked room. I need time to read this, I said. I'll let you know. How much time, however much I need. I walked out of the kitchen. I did not sign. I did not cry. I did not explain. I went to Joanne's room and I sat on the edge of her bed and I checked her oxygen levels and I said goodnight and I went upstairs to my room and I closed the door. Behind me in the kitchen, Logan sat alone with his papers, his yellow arrows pointed at nothing. The next 4 days, I built a case. Not because I'd ever imagined building one, not because I'd ever pictured myself as the kind of woman who screenshots bank statements at midnight and emails them to a divorce lawyer before sunrise, but because that is what you do when you find out your husband has been spending $87,000 on another woman while you replace the hot water heater in his mother's house with money from your own savings because he told you cash flow was tight. Cash flow was not tight. Cash flow was in Jacksonville. I went to work every day. 7 to 3. I did not miss a shift. My patients needed me. Marcus needed me to count to 10. A 6-year-old named Destiny needed me to hold her hand during her first steps with her new braces. A 3-year-old named Kai needed me to blow bubbles while he practiced his grip strength. I could not fall apart at work. I could not fall apart anywhere, actually, because Joanne still needed dinner and meds and vitals and someone to say goodnight. But between Clinic and Joanne, in the hours I used to spend watching Logan's Employee of the Year video or staring at my phone waiting for him to call back, I searched. The bank statements were online. Joint account, the one Logan had told me not to worry about, the one he said he managed. I'd never looked. I looked now. $1,400 a month, automatic transfer to an account I'd never seen. Every month for 3 years. I followed the routing number. A rental payment. An apartment on San Jose Boulevard in Jacksonville. Piper's apartment. I opened Venmo. Logan's transactions were public because he'd never bothered to change the setting, because it had never occurred to him that I would look. $12,000 to Piper Voss over 3 years, labeled MISC. I clicked through the transactions one by one. Baby gear, restaurant charges, a Peloton subscription, a Peloton. I had replaced Joanne's leaking kitchen faucet by watching a YouTube tutorial because we couldn't afford a plumber, and this man was buying his girlfriend a Peloton. Carmen sat with me in the break room during lunch and helped me organize everything into a timeline. Dates, amounts, descriptions. She was methodical about it, the way she was methodical about patient charts, the way people are methodical when they've already been through the fire and know which burns heal and which ones scar. Total, she asked on the 4th day. I looked at the number on my phone calculator. $87,000, give or take. $87,000. In 3 years. I replaced the water heater in this house with my own money because Logan said cash flow was tight. I closed the calculator. Cash flow was in Jacksonville. Carmen looked at me across the break room table with the expression of a woman who has been exactly where I am standing and survived it and is trying very hard not to tell me that the surviving part doesn't happen all at once. But the money wasn't the worst of it. The money was just numbers. The worst of it was this. 2 months ago, a Tuesday night in February, Joanne's oxygen dropped to 84, and I drove 90 on the interstate to get her to the ER. I called Logan from the hospital parking lot. I called 3 times. He picked up on the 4th call and said, "I'm in a meeting, babe. I'll call back." His voice was relaxed. Background noise. A television. A woman laughing. He was not in a meeting. He was at home. With Piper. While I sat in the ER waiting room filling out his mother's insurance forms with hands that smelled like the hand sanitizer they pump into your palms at the door, Logan was watching television with the woman he'd chosen instead of me. I had the evidence. I had the bank statements, the Venmo records, the timeline. Carmen's lawyer, Marcia Webb, had reviewed everything and told me to sit tight, that Georgia was a fault state, that Logan's adultery barred him from alimony, that the dissipation claim alone would shift the entire property division in my favor. I had the ammunition. I thought I had enough. I did not know what was coming next. I came home from the clinic on a Monday and the house was wrong. I knew it the way you know when a patient's breathing has changed. Not louder, not quieter. Just different. A shift in the rhythm. Joanne's television was off. It was never off. She watched Jeopardy reruns the way other people breathe automatically all day, the sound low enough to be company without being noise. The television was off and the house was silent, and the silence had a weight to it like furniture someone had rearranged while I was gone. I put my keys on the hook. I put the grocery bag on the counter. Ensure shakes, ginger ale, lemon yogurt. The routine. I called out Joanne's name. No answer. I walked into the kitchen. Logan was sitting at the table. He was not alone. Next to him sat a man I had never seen before, mid-50s charcoal vest, a leather folder open in front of him. A lawyer. Logan had brought a lawyer into Joanne's kitchen on a Monday afternoon, while I was at work stretching a 4-year-old's hamstrings and singing the ABCs to keep him calm. And across from them in her wheelchair sat Joanne. She was pale. Her hands were in her lap, one on top of the other, the way she held them during chemo when she was trying not to let anyone see how bad it was. Her leather journal sat under her left palm. She was not looking at me. She was looking at the table. Wit. Good. Sit down. Logan gestured to the chair next to Joanne, the empty one, as if he were hosting a dinner party in a house he hadn't slept in for 3 years. What is this? This is Gerald Kemp. He's my attorney. We've been talking to Mom about the transition. The transition. He called it a transition, like we were merging departments, like this was a quarterly review. I stayed standing. I looked at Joanne. She still would not look at me. I looked at Gerald Kemp in his vest with his leather folder. I looked at Logan. What did you tell her? Logan put his hands flat on the table. A posture I recognized. The one he used in his sales videos. Open palms, nothing to hide. Mom, Whitney's been wonderful. But our marriage is over, and she knows that. The problem is, she's refusing to leave the house. She's staying because she knows this house is your asset, and she thinks if she takes care of you long enough, she'll get something when the time comes. I heard every word. I heard them clearly, the way you hear a sentence in a language you've spoken your whole life, each syllable landing exactly where it was supposed to. He was telling his mother the woman I had driven to 47 rounds of chemotherapy, the woman whose vomit I had cleaned off the bathroom floor at 3 in the morning, the woman I had fed and bathed and held upright in the shower when she was too weak to stand that I was using her. Say that again, I said. My voice came out flat, level. The voice I used when a child's parent was panicking in the clinic and I needed the room to be calm. The part about me using your mother. Logan turned. Something crossed his face fast, a flash of panic that disappeared under the salesman mask before it fully formed. Wit. That's not what I meant. I'm just trying to make sure Mom understands the situation. You flew down here. You brought a lawyer. You told your mother who I bathed last night because she was too weak to stand in the shower that I am using her. I said it wrong. What you mean is if I leave quietly, you get the house. And if I fight, you'll tell everyone I'm a gold digger who married you to get your mother's property. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Albright, no one is accusing you of anything. We're simply trying to have a conversation about, I'm talking to my husband. I did not look at Gerald Kemp. I did not need to look at Gerald Kemp. I needed to look at Joanne. I turned to her. She was still staring at the table, her hand on the leather journal. The clock on the wall behind her ticked. I could hear it. I could hear every tick, because the room had gone so quiet that the clock sounded like a hammer. Joanne, I kept my voice steady. Do you believe him? She did not answer immediately. 5 seconds. 10. Long enough for Logan to shift in his chair, long enough for Gerald Kemp to glance at his client, long enough for the clock to tick a dozen times. Then Joanne raised her head. She looked at her son. She looked at him the way she used to look at the fourth graders who came in from recess claiming they hadn't started the fight. A long, measured look. 30 years of teaching children had given Joanne Albright an internal lie detector that no amount of chemotherapy could disable. Then she looked at me. No, she said. I don't. Logan's face did something I had never seen it do. It collapsed. Not dramatically, not like a movie. More like a building that had been leaning for years and finally lost the one beam holding it up. A micro shift. If you blinked, you'd miss it. But I did not blink. He recovered fast. He always recovered fast. He reached for Joanne's hand and held it between both of his. Mom, I know you're upset, but I'm your son. Your only son. Joanne looked at his hand on hers. Then she pulled her hand away. Slowly, carefully. The way you withdraw your arm from an IV line when the nurse isn't looking one careful inch at a time. Yes, she said. You are. It was not a confirmation. It was a diagnosis. Logan left the next morning. Gerald Kemp left with him. They drove to the airport in a rental car and I stood at the kitchen window and watched them go. And then I made Joanne her breakfast and gave her her pills and asked her what she wanted for lunch as if a lawyer had not been sitting at our table 12 hours ago, telling her that the woman who kept her alive was only doing it for the inheritance. 2 days later, on a Wednesday morning, Piper came to the house. I was at the clinic. Joanne was alone. The home health aide didn't arrive until 11. The doorbell rang at 10:15. And Joanne wheeled herself to the front door and opened it. Piper stood on the porch with Lily on her hip. No Logan. She had come alone. Joanne told me this later, sitting in her wheelchair in the late afternoon light, her voice as even as if she were reading a grocery list. She told me what Piper said and what she said back, word for word, because Joanne had a memory like a court reporter, and 30 years of parent conferences had trained her to recall conversations with the precision of someone who knew that exact words mattered. Piper smiled. She had dressed for the occasion, Joanne said. Nice blouse, good earrings, Lily in a little yellow dress. I wanted to properly introduce myself, Piper said. And Lily, your granddaughter. Joanne looked at the baby. She saw Logan's eyes in that small face. His chin, the head tilt. She saw her son and his daughter, and she told me later that was the hardest part, that she couldn't look at that baby without seeing the boy she'd raised, the boy she'd taught to ride a bike in the driveway, the boy who had grown up and done this. I know this is complicated, Piper continued, rehearsed smooth. But Logan and we want to make this work. All of us. Lily deserves to know her grandmother. How long? Joanne asked. Excuse me, how long have you known he was married? Piper paused. The smoothness cracked just a little. It was complicated from the beginning. That's not what I asked. And then the mask came off. Piper's voice changed, Joanne said. Got harder. The sweet veneer peeled away, and underneath was someone who had come to this house with a strategy and was watching it fail. Mrs. Albright, I understand you're close to Whitney, but Whitney and Logan have been over for years. Everyone knows it. Logan only stayed because he felt guilty about you, about your illness. Get out of my house. Mrs. Albright, this is my house. My name is on the deed. I am asking you to leave. Now. Piper left. Lily was crying. Joanne closed the door. Her hands were shaking, she told me, but her face was not. When I got home at 3:30, Joanne was sitting in her room, the television off, waiting for me. She told me what had happened in that same even voice. Then she said, Whitney, it's time. Come upstairs. I held her elbow on the stairs. We took them slowly, one at a time, the way we always did, stopping on the landing so she could catch her breath. The house was quiet around us. Late afternoon sun came through the hallway window and laid a stripe of gold across the carpet. Joanne reached into the pocket of her bathrobe. She pulled out a key. She put it in the lock of the second door on the left. Logan's old room. The room she had told me was just storage. The door opened. The light came on. The room was bare. No bed, no posters, no trace of the boy who'd grown up here. A small desk against the wall. A chair. On the desk, a manila folder. Next to the folder, a stack of legal documents. Next to those, the leather journal. Sit down, Joanne said. Read. I sat. I read. Page by page. Joanne had rewritten her will. Everything. The house, her life insurance, her retirement accounts. All of it went to me. Logan was removed entirely. The power of attorney had been transferred from Logan to me. And there was one more document, a caregiver compensation agreement drawn up by an attorney, calculating my hours at $20 an hour across 5 years, a number so large I had to read it 3 times before the figure registered. You did this when my voice was barely there. The phone call was 2 years ago. A woman called this house and said Lily's kicking. It took me 6 months after that to find the right attorney. I had to wait for days when I was strong enough to sit up and sign. The will was finalized 18 months ago. Joanne. I closed the folder. If you knew for 2 years, why did you let me stay? Because you would have stayed anyway. That's who you are. She was right. I would have stayed. That was the worst part. Even knowing everything I knew now, even with the bank statements and the Venmo records and the Jacksonville apartment, if Joanne had told me 2 years ago, I probably would have stayed. Not for Logan. For her. Because that is what I do. I stay. Joanne went to bed. I helped her down the stairs one step at a time, and I gave her the evening meds, and I filled her water glass, and I placed the leather journal on her nightstand, and I said goodnight. Then I went to my room, and I closed the door, and I lay down in the dark. I had weapons now. I had the house. I had the will. I had legal protection that Joanne had spent 18 months quietly building in the room where her son used to sleep. I should have been grateful. I should have been triumphant. I was empty. Because none of it changed the thing underneath. Logan had watched me get up at 5:30 every morning for 5 years. He had heard me on the phone every night telling him about Joanne's vitals, about the bad days, about the days I thought we might lose her. He had listened to me say, I miss you and I love you and I wish you were here. And every single time he had been lying, not just about Piper, about me, about what I was to him. I was not his wife. I was not his partner. I was not even his obligation. I was his solution. The woman who stayed so he didn't have to. The one who changed the sheets and measured the medication and drove 90 on the interstate at 2 in the morning so that Logan Albright could live his real life in Jacksonville with a woman named Piper and a daughter named Lily and a Peloton that I paid for with the overtime I didn't take. Every time he called me his rock, it was not a compliment. It was a job description. Rocks don't move. That was the point. I wasn't supposed to move. I cried. For the first time since any of this started, I cried. Not about Logan. Not about Piper. About the 5 years I had spent believing I was building a family, when what I was actually doing was standing guard over an empty house so the owner could live somewhere else. The crying lasted a long time. It lasted until the bedside clock read something I couldn't see because my eyes were too swollen. Then it stopped. Not because I ran out, because something shifted. I did not want to save my marriage. That want was dead. I did not want Logan to come back. I did not want to pretend this could be fixed. What I wanted, what I needed, was simpler than that and harder than that. I needed to know that the 5 years I had given were worth something, not because Logan said so, not because anyone said so, because they were. Because I had cooked 612 meals and driven 47 chemo runs and slept 5.5 hours a night for 1,825 days, and none of it, not 1 minute of it, had been wasted. It had been spent on a woman who saw me, who counted the days with me, who wrote it all down in a leather journal I had been too respectful to open. I got up. I washed my face. I opened my laptop. I wrote an email to Marcia Webb. The subject line was 4 words long. I'm ready. Let's file. Marcia Webb filed the paperwork on a Tuesday. Fault divorce. Grounds of adultery. The state of Georgia requires a 30-day waiting period, which meant the clock started ticking in a courthouse downtown while I drove to work and stretched Marcus's hamstrings and sang the ABCs and pretended my life was not being legally disassembled 3 miles away. I texted Logan that evening. Short. Controlled. I'm reviewing your papers. Give me until Friday. He wrote back immediately. Take your time, Whit. I know it's a lot. He thought I was caving. He thought his yellow Post-it notes and his lawyer in a vest had done their work, and all I needed was a few more days to accept the terms. He did not know I had already filed. He did not know about the $87,000 in dissipation evidence sitting in Marcia Webb's office. He did not know about the locked room upstairs or the manila folder or the will that his mother had rewritten 18 months ago while he was in Jacksonville buying Pelotons. I went to work. I came home. I fed Joanne. I checked vitals. I did not miss a shift. My patients needed me. I needed them. Marcus needed me to count to 10. Destiny needed me to hold her hand. Kai needed bubbles. I could not give up the one part of my life where I knew exactly what I was doing and why. Carmen caught me in the break room on Wednesday. I was eating a granola bar and staring at the wall. You okay? No. I looked at her. But I'm moving. She nodded. She did not ask where. She knew. Joanne scheduled the notary appointment for the following week. I want this done properly, she said, sitting up in bed that evening, her voice carrying the same authority it had carried in her classroom for 3 decades, with witnesses, with everything signed and stamped and sealed, so that when he challenges it, and he will challenge it, there is not a single crack for his lawyer to crawl through. I told Logan Friday. He said he'd come. He said he'd bring Piper. I said fine. Friday arrived the way all the worst days arrive, looking exactly like every other day. I went to the clinic. I worked my shift. I came home at 3 and I made coffee and I set a manila folder on the living room table and I sat on the sofa and I waited. Joanne was beside me in her wheelchair. She had dressed for this. Not dressed up. Dressed the way a retired teacher dresses for a meeting she intends to control. Clean blouse hair, brushed reading glasses around her neck on the beaded chain she'd worn since before I knew her. Her leather journal was in her lap. Her hands were still. The folder sat on the table between us. Not Logan's divorce papers. A different folder. Mine. At 4:15, the front door opened. Logan walked in first, Piper behind him, Lily on her hip. He was wearing the sales grin, the one with the white teeth and the crinkled eyes, the one I used to believe was real. He saw the folder. He saw me. He saw his mother. What's this? Sit down, Logan. He sat. The grin held for another second, then slipped. Piper stayed standing near the doorway, Lily against her chest, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked uncertain. She was reading the room, and the room was not what she'd expected. I opened the folder. I did it slowly, because speed was not the point. Precision was the point. Every page, every line, every number had a place, and I was going to lay them out the way I organized a patient chart, methodical and clean and impossible to argue with. The first page was a bank statement, joint account. I turned it so Logan could read it. This is a monthly automatic transfer of $1,400 to an account registered to Piper Voss. I pointed to the highlight, San Jose Boulevard, Jacksonville. Her apartment, 36 consecutive months. Logan's jaw twitched. That's my money. That's marital funds. Dissipation. Every dollar you spent on her comes out of your share. I turned to the next page. Venmo records. Transaction after transaction, all public, all time-stamped, all labeled with the casualness of a man who had never imagined his wife would look. $12,000 in Venmo transfers to Piper Voss over 3 years. Baby supplies, restaurants, a Peloton subscription. Total marital funds spent outside the marriage $87,000, give or take. Logan's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Behind him, Piper shifted Lily to her other hip. I turned to the next page. A screenshot. Logan on stage at the National Sales Conference, Navy vest podium, 200 colleagues in the audience. This is the transcript of your Employee of the Year speech. You said, and I quote, "My wife Whitney holds down the fort back home so I can focus on building something out here. She's my rock." I looked at him. You thanked me, in front of 200 people, for holding down the fort, while you were building a second family with the money I earned, holding that fort. I reached for the leather journal. Joanne placed it in my hand. Her fingers brushed mine dry and thin, and she let go. "This is your mother's journal." I set it on the table. She kept it for years. Dated entries. Every day you called and every day you didn't. Every chemo appointment I drove her to. Every ER visit. Every night I slept on the hospital floor beside her bed. I opened the journal to a page near the middle. I read out loud. My voice did not shake. October 14th. A woman called the house. Said Lily's kicking. My son has a child I have never met. Whitney was in the kitchen making my lunch. She doesn't know. I can't tell her yet. Logan went white. Not gradually. All at once, the way a screen goes blank when the power cuts. He turned to Joanne. You went through my... He couldn't finish the sentence because there was no sentence to finish. Piper hadn't called his phone. She'd called the house. She called my house Logan. Joanne's voice was level, quiet. The voice of a woman who had been waiting 18 months to say these words and was not going to waste them. On my phone, Joanne sat up straighter in her wheelchair. She was 64 years old and she weighed 112 pounds, and her wrists were so thin I could circle them with my thumb and forefinger. But when she spoke, the room contracted around her voice, the way a classroom does when the teacher stops asking and starts telling. I have changed my will. This house goes to Whitney. My life insurance goes to Whitney. My retirement accounts go to Whitney. I have executed a new power of attorney naming Whitney as my agent. Mom. Logan stood. His chair tipped backward and hit the floor, and he did not pick it up. You can't do this. I can. I did. 18 months ago. I was of sound mind. My attorney verified it. The notary verified it. 2 witnesses verified it. I have the paperwork upstairs in the room where you used to sleep. She manipulated you. His voice was louder now. She's been in your ear for 5 years, Mom. 5 years. Can't you see what she's doing? I did not stand. I did not raise my voice. I stayed on the sofa with my hands in my lap, and I spoke the way I spoke to parents at the clinic when a child's diagnosis was serious and the room needed to be still. Logan. Your mother sat in that chair for 47 rounds of chemotherapy. I drove her to every single one. You called 3 or 4 times a month, sometimes less. Your mother didn't need anyone in her ear. She needed someone in the room. From behind Logan near the doorway, Piper's voice. Small now. Logan, let's just go. This is... Joanne turned her wheelchair to face Piper. The movement was slow, but the look was instant, a look that 30 years of teaching had honed into something surgical, the look she gave to children who stood in front of her desk and lied with their whole faces. Young lady, Joanne's voice did not rise. It dropped. My son left his wife to care for his dying mother while he built a life with you. He used Whitney. You let him. I have nothing to say to you. Please leave my house. Piper backed toward the door. Lily started crying. The sound filled the room, a baby's wail bouncing off the walls of a house that should have had a baby in it years ago. A house where I had asked for a baby and been told, not yet, not yet, not yet, while Logan was making one in Jacksonville with someone else. Logan stood in the middle of the living room. He looked at his mother. He looked at me. He looked at Piper retreating through the front door with his daughter in her arms. He turned back to Joanne. One last time. Mom, I'm your son. Your only son. Joanne looked at him. She looked at him for a long time. And for the first time, for the very first time since I had known her, I saw tears in Joanne Albright's eyes. Not many, just enough to catch the light from the window. I know you are, she said. That's what makes this so terrible. Logan left. The front door closed. A car started in the driveway, tires on gravel, then nothing. Joanne and I sat on the back porch. The sun was going down behind the magnolia tree and the cicadas were starting their evening noise, and the air was warm and thick the way it always is in Augusta in late spring. We did not talk for a while. We just sat, 2 women on a porch watching the sky go orange. Are you all right? Joanne asked. No. Good. If you said yes, I'd worry. The cicadas filled the silence. I watched a cardinal land on the fence post and look at us and fly away. Why didn't you tell me 2 years ago? Joanne was quiet for a moment. Because you would have confronted him. He would have lied. You would have believed him. Not because you're stupid, Whitney. Because you loved him. And then I would have lost you too. I turned that over. She was right. 2 years ago, I would have asked Logan. And he would have done what he always did. Turned it around. Made me the problem. Made me the jealous wife. Made me the one who was imagining things. and I would have believed him. Not because I was weak, but because I loved him. And love makes you believe the version of the story where the person you love is still good. Joanne had waited. She had waited for Logan to do the one thing she couldn't do for her, which was prove it himself. He'd walked Piper and Lily through the front door. He'd sat them down at the dinner table and introduced his other family over brisket. He'd handed Joanne the evidence she needed on a silver platter because he was so certain that his mother would always choose blood that it had never occurred to him she might choose something else. Joanne, I looked at her. You let me take care of you for 2 years knowing my marriage was already dead. She folded her hands in her lap, the same hands that had signed the will. The same hands that had gripped mine during round 11 when the nausea was so bad she couldn't speak. I let you take care of me because you are good at it, because I love you, and because if I had told you, you would have stopped. Not stopped caring for me, but stopped being happy. And those 2 years, Whitney, you still hummed while you cooked. You still told me about your patients. You still laughed. I wanted you to keep laughing a little longer. I cried. The second time. But this was different from the dark night in my bedroom when I'd cried because I'd been used. This time I cried because someone had been watching me for 5 years counting the same days I was counting, writing it all down in a leather journal, and she had done it not because she owed me, not because I was blood, but because she chose me. She chose me the way I chose her, not out of obligation, out of something that has no name but is stronger than any contract Logan and I ever signed. A week later we went to the notary's office. You know this part. You heard it at the beginning. Joanne reading the document, the notary's pen, the fluorescent light, my dry eyes. But now you know what came before. After the signing, I drove Joanne home. The same route I'd driven hundreds of times past the hospital, past the clinic, past the Kroger on Wheeler Road, where I bought her lemon yogurt every week. But today was different. No chemo appointment, no ER run, just 2 women in a Honda Civic with the windows down and the May wind blowing through and the radio off because we didn't need it. My phone sat in the cup holder, turned off. Logan had sent 47 messages in the past week. I'd seen the preview lines before I powered it down. Mom, please. This isn't fair. I'm still your son. You can't do this. I did not read them. He'd had 5 years to say something that mattered. He'd spent those years saying things that didn't. When we got home, I turned the phone on, scrolled past Logan's messages without opening them. But there was one from Carmen. Saw your chair empty at lunch. Hope you're okay. I left something in your locker. I would open my locker Monday morning at 7. Inside, I would find a card with Carmen's handwriting and a little keychain shaped like a cat. Judge Judy. The cat she'd adopted the day her divorce was finalized. The back of the card would say, "You didn't stay too long. You stayed until you were ready. That's different. I'm proud of you." And I would stand in the locker room at 7 in the morning and cry for the 3rd time, but that was Monday. Today was Friday. Today, I had someone to feed. I thought about what Joanne said on the porch. You still hummed while you cooked. I didn't remember what I hummed. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was that someone heard. 5 years, 47 rounds of chemotherapy, 612 meals, 1,825 days. I knew the numbers because I'd kept track not to build a case, not to prove anything to anyone, but because every day I reminded myself that I was here, that I had chosen to be here. That being here meant something, even when the person I was doing it for was 3 states away pretending I didn't exist. And now I knew someone else had been keeping count. In a leather journal, every day I came home. Every meal I cooked. Every drive to the hospital. Every time I stayed. She wrote it down. Not because she needed evidence, because she needed to remember that she was not alone. Joanne owed me nothing. I owed Joanne nothing. But 2 women had chosen each other across blood, across expectation, across every reason either of us had to walk away. And that was stronger than any marriage certificate Logan Albright ever signed. I helped Joanne inside. I eased her into bed. I set out the evening medication. I filled her water glass. I placed the leather journal on her nightstand, the same spot where it had sat for years, the book I had never opened, the book that had held my name on every page. Joanne, thank you for staying. She looked at me. She smiled. It was a tired smile, the kind that comes after 47 rounds of chemotherapy. But it was real, the most real thing in that house. Sweetheart, you stayed first. I turned on the kitchen light. I opened the refrigerator. I started making dinner. 2 plates. Not 3, not 4. 2. And I started to hum. Here is what nobody tells you about being the one who stays. They don't tell you that staying looks like weakness from the outside. They don't tell you that the person you are holding together will sometimes be the same person who is quietly tearing you apart, and they don't tell you that the difference between loyalty and self-destruction is not how much you give. It is whether the person you are giving to has already left the building. Whitney stayed for 5 years. She got up at 5:30 every morning. She drove to work, she stretched children's legs, she drove home, she cooked dinner, she counted pills, she checked oxygen levels, she slept 5.5 hours, and she did it again. She believed she was holding her family together. She was not. She was holding a door open for a man who had walked out of it 3 years ago and never looked back. That is the first lesson. Staying is not always love. Sometimes staying is a habit you built around a person who is no longer there. Whitney never stopped to ask whether Logan was staying for her because she was too busy replacing faucets with YouTube tutorials and driving 90 on the interstate at 2 in the morning to notice that the man she was building a life for had already built one somewhere else. If you recognize that schedule, the one where you wake before dawn and collapse after midnight, and somewhere in between, you forgot to ask yourself whether any of it is being returned, then you already know the feeling Whitney had when she found out about the $1,400 a month. It is not the money. It is the realization that you were solving a problem someone else created, and they let you solve it, because your solving it meant they never had to come home. But here is the second lesson, and it is the one that matters more. Joanne saw Whitney every single day. She wrote it down. She counted the meals and the chemo drives and the nights. Whitney slept on a hospital chair, and she put it all in a leather journal because she needed a record that someone had shown up, not to build a case. Because she was afraid the world would forget that Whitney had been there. The way the world forgets the people who stay. Someone is watching you right now, the way Joanne watched Whitney. Someone is counting the things you do that nobody thanks you for. The meals that get eaten without comment. The appointments you drive to. The emergencies you handle at 2 in the morning while someone else sleeps through them. You may not know who it is yet, but they are keeping count. So here is the question. When was the last time you stopped long enough to ask yourself whether the fort you are holding is still worth holding? And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, that discomfort is not weakness. That is the sound of you waking up. If Whitney's story touched something real in you, if you recognized your own life in the 5:30 alarm or the unanswered phone call or the faucet you fixed yourself because someone said the money was tight, then say so. Leave a comment. You do not have to explain everything. Sometimes just saying, "I know this feeling," is enough. Someone else is reading right now who needs to hear she is not the only one holding the door open for someone who already left. Thank you for listening.